This episode is proudly supported by OpenTable.
Nearly 1/3 of diners are booking same day. So they're making those decisions on the spot. And 10% are making their bookings within just a few hours. And so it's why it's so important to have booking software like OpenTable, which allows your diners to discover you. And so when restaurants are on platforms like OpenTable, they're much more likely to be discovered. We help diners to connect to restaurants. Ultimately, having technology, using technology, helps you to reattach to those diners.
Experience the power of OpenTable. For an exclusive offer, visit restaurant.opentable.com.au/DITW.
The gelato's damn good, and we're consistent. I think for us, consistency is key, knowing that you can go from Canberra to Brisbane to Melbourne to Sydney to Hong Kong and you get the exact same flavour.
This is The Producers. I'm Anthony Huckstep. It's become one of the most celebrated gelato brands in the country, but Gelato Messina has stayed true to its roots, ethics and offering to ensure the quality of its product. And as Donato Toce explains, it has a cow-to-cone approach now too.
My name's Donato Toce. I'm, I don't know how to describe it, head chef, if you want to call it that, co-owner of Gelato Messina. So Messina is quite a complex little monster. We produce gelato, and we only distribute to our own stores. We have, at current count, we have 27 locations in Australia and one in Hong Kong. What we produce is gelato from, without sounding like too much of a dick, we produce it from cow to cone. So we've got our own dairy farm that produces our milk that we use in our gelato. On average, we make about 30 tonne worth of gelato a week. That's liquid mix. So then once it's churned and turns into the actual gelato that we all know and love, you basically add 25% on that. And then it converts into litres. But everything that we put into the gelato, we make in-house. So ranging from the chocolates to the inclusions, to the nuts, to everything, we source ourselves. We somehow work it, manipulate it, let's say, do what we need to do to it for it to end up in the gelato. Along with the gelato, we also make cakes. So we've got a range of 9 gelato cakes that we do. We've just started a little concession in a Harris farm in Lane Cove. So it's the first one that we've tried, and basically we've got another 20 items that we do in there. Then we produce our own chocolate. So we source chocolate from all over the world, and we produce it for ourselves that go into the gelato. We also do a wholesale range that a lot of restaurants use of chocolate. And then we just, in January, opened our first store that has a chocolate range in it, and that's at MLC or Mum Place. And we plan to do that in just selected locations within Sydney and Brisbane and Melbourne as well. So in Sydney, we're opening our Marrickville store, which is where our HQ is, and that's basically going to have our entire range, and that will have the chocolate. And I think that's probably all we're going to do in Sydney is those 2 locations. Melbourne, we're yet to decide where we're going to do that, and in Brisbane, we will be opening up in a Queen's Wharf. And there we're actually going to do a complete mini chocolate production. So we do a lot along with what we do under this roof. We also have 2 farms. We've got our dairy farm that has 650 head of Jersey cattle, and like I mentioned, it produces all our milk. And then we've also got a hazelnut farm that was a bit of a balls up at the start, but is slowly starting to get a little commercial viability. But we do use Australian hazelnuts, so we source hazelnuts from all over Victoria, and We use Australian hazelnuts. Along with that too, we make something called dulce de leche, which is a South American style caramel, which is made by a reduction of milk and sugar. So you caramelize the milk proteins, and that's how you get the caramelization. And it's very distinctive flavor. It's very different to caramel or a caramel maison. It's got its own unique taste. It's got quite a lot of. It's caused by the Maillard reaction, so it's got like a hit of umami at the back. But it's really nice. It's beautiful.
For Donato, food was a way to get out of school, but he was soon swept up in the energy of hospitality.
I was blessed with a family, being born in an Italian family that loved food. So I remember my mum was what they called a signora in a restaurant. So she worked at restaurants, and she would make the pasta and the sauces in this Italian restaurant. So we always had fresh pasta. For us, having packet pasta was like a treat. It was like having fast food. So we always had fresh pasta. My dad loved to cook, and we'd have massive barbecues where he'd kill a lamb, and then we'd eat the entire lamb. And that obviously wasn't just the immediate family; it was a larger family, so he'd take care of that. But then, in that too, we would make the sausages, we would do the tomatoes, we would do the wine. Every season there was something happening. So, food was an important thing. I was also lucky enough to grow up every night with dinner at the table with the family, and Sunday lunch was mandatory. It doesn't matter what time you got home. You had to sit down midday. Sunday lunch was served, and you were there. You were present. So, they're amazing food memories. But the food for us was always classic Italian. It was always like pasta, a meat, and a salad, and then dessert. Mum never cooked dessert, which was really strange, but it was always a pasta and then a main. I was really shocking at high school. Just barely scraped through on my VCE, and then it was like, all right, I got to get some work, and stumbled into a kitchen that, funnily enough, that my mother worked in, and decided to become a chef. But prior to that, I'd been working in kitchens since I was 13, and working in my cousin's pizza shop, and then going from a kitchen hand or a glass washer to, one day a chef not showing up and going, do you want to give this a crack? And I was like, yeah, cool. And so I always worked in kitchens and in pizza shops and stuff like that. So I started off really young, but then starting my apprenticeship at like 18. And at that point, it was a 4-year apprenticeship, so finishing it when I was 22. So I was a late bloomer. But I literally fell into it because I was too stupid to do anything else.
Donato cut his teeth as a chef in some of Australia's best restaurants.
I've worked at... the first restaurant I worked at was at a restaurant called Bordelotto's and Cafe Menace. And that was in Melbourne. It was a Melbourne institution run by an absolute doyen of the Melbourne food scene, which was Olympia Bordelotto. And she went on to do Shoshones in the city, and I did a very small stint there. Then I moved to Cafe Cucina, which again was another institution, and worked there for a long time. After that, went to a place called Vic Ave, Cosy. So a lot of restaurants. And then I went overseas, and I sort of finished my apprenticeship, worked for a little bit, saved up. I had like 4 jobs, went overseas, and I worked in Rome for a year. And that was a lot of fun. And I came back to a restaurant where I ended up being a partner. So I started off just as a chef de partie, and worked my way up to actually owning part of the restaurant. That was my first experience as a restaurant owner. And there was 4 of us in the business, and the chef another chef that was there, he and I are absolute best mates, to the point where we're still in contact, and baptized one of his children, and he was best man at my wedding. So it was like, it was, rather than, I think the best thing to come out of that was my mate Cordell. So he's got a couple of restaurants in Brisbane now. And yeah, so after that, what did I do after that? After that, I moved to Sydney and we opened up Pizza Biro in Surrey Hills. So I was the opening chef there and was there for two and a half years. After that, I left that and I stopped the business in Melbourne and I moved up to Brisbane and worked with Cordell. And then on the way out of Sydney, I came back to Sydney and started working at a Tabula. And that's how I started at Messina.
Already with a working relationship making the odd gelato with Messina for his restaurant, an opportunity to make gelato full-time presented itself.
Well, Messina started in 2002. So my current business partner, Nick, started in 2002 and with some other people. And it was a very different model. So they opened up with 7 locations. This is in 2002. But it was a wholesale arm that sold to retail. So someone owned the company and they owned the wholesale arm. The people who owned Messina as the retail arm, I don't know the exact story, but something went a bit skew-if. And they basically closed 6 of the locations, all but Darlinghurst, which was the original store. And at that point, Nick was having troubles with his partners, and the split was, I'll just take back Darlow, you can have the wholesale arm, I'll do my own thing here. And that was in 2006. Later that year, Nick's brother Dani joined. Nick is amazing with gelato and the chemistry of it and the numbers of it and all of that. And also the flavour profiles. He's got what we call a hyper palate, so he picks up things that I can't even taste. Which sometimes is annoying, but most of the time it's very helpful. He is very much a back-of-house person. In fact, Dani is his brother, and he would come to the store and he would stop Nick from serving because his customer service was absolutely atrocious. And basically one day Nick asked Dani, do you want to just come and do this? And they did it, and that's what they did in 2006. In 2008, I joined the Tabula team in 2007, and I was coming in as a sous chef to replace the head chef then, Louise. So I did that, and we formed a friendship. And then it was my time to leave Tabula because I wanted to do something for myself. And Nick came in, and one day to use the fax, this is how long it was, to use the fax in the Tabula, and I was working one morning by myself and we were just having a chat, and I was explaining to him that, I think I'm going to leave, and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, look, do you feel like making ice cream? I'm like, you serious? And he's like, yeah. Because I would always ask him, I'd put ice creams on the dessert menu, but I'd always ask him for help to formulate them. And one day one of my ice cream flavours was in the cabinet. So he got one of my flavours and put it in the cabinet. So at that point, I thought, okay, that sounds pretty cool. Get out of working nights and do days. And that was in end of 2008. And then in 2010, Declan, who is our head of marketing, joined, and that is what the current incarnation of Messina is. So it's basically the 4 of us. And now we each have a team below us that have a vested interest in the company as well. So all of us have someone that supports us, or now we support them, and they run the company while we're just here as, we come in, we fluff around. The company's grown since then.
The change of pace from a commercial kitchen to gelato maker was the biggest hurdle for Donato.
When I got to Messina, I remember the first day, Nick had gone on holidays and I'd started with Dani. And in the kitchen, he's just like, bro, slow down. Just slow down. There's no rush. It's cool. It's like, oh, okay. And the fact that we used to have dinner at a Tabula too was always served at 5 o'clock, but it was literally 15 minutes to half an hour. I remember my first day, Dani getting lunch, going, come and sit down. It's like, but it's lunch, I've got to get this done. He's like, yeah, no, sit down. And it's always been that approach of just being laid back, but just making sure that everything is just perfect and making sure it's always right. And there's no rush to it. It's not the end of the world if it doesn't get done. It will get done. It will get done. It will happen. And it's for me, it's a great way of. I think it shows in the product that it's just there's no rush to it. It's everything takes its time. Give it the patience that it needs. Give it the time that it deserves, and it will work out. It'll actually work out so much better than if you just haul ass and rush this thing through. So for us, we've still do that mentality now, even though it's so busy. We're constantly busy. It used to ebb and flow for us, where winter would slow down slightly, and then summer would ramp up higher than the last summer. Now it just seems to be consistent throughout the year, which is fantastic. Obviously summer is a lot busier. There's a huge difference between summer and winter, but I think everybody here is just used to the pace.
Messina have created the most incredible cow-to-cone food system, whether it's growing fruit or nuts or producing milk.
Our business partner who runs the farm as well, he fell into the farm purely by accident, and what he's doing there is it's absolutely amazing. So as I mentioned, we've got 600 head of Jersey cattle. We chose Jersey because of the milk they produce. It's a lot fattier, it's a lot higher in protein. It's the classic gelato. It's a classic milk for gelato. But what we're doing, we're milking the cows once a day, so you get a higher solid percentage within the milk. We keep cow on calf, so the calves stay with the mother until they're weaned off. We have a no-till method on the farm, so it's very much a regenerative farming, where we don't do scorched earth. It's basically one crop replaces the other. The cows are completely grass-fed, so we produce all their feed. So it starts off from there. It starts off from the grass on the ground, and the way we rear the cattle, which produces a great milk. Then for us, it's a matter of formulating the recipes. So each flavour has an individual recipe for us. If we're making chocolate, we formulate the chocolate for the particular gelato. So we've done different milk chocolates, we've done different dark chocolates. Rather than doing single origin, which is something that we already do, we now focus on the variety of bean, the variety of cocoa. All our inclusions are made in-house, so we have a complete bakery team. For us, there's a huge amount that goes into the gelato. It's saying it to you now, even for me, is like, geez, we do a lot. But for us, it's just day to day, and then getting it to stores is another issue in itself. So, and what our ops team does at stores and carries that on is quite an amazing feat on their behalf, to be honest. Because we can come up with weird and wonderful flavours, and they just have to get it churned and in the cabinet.
There's a big difference between ice cream and gelato, but the approach at Messina is a step above most.
Gelato has less fat than ice cream. So our thing is it goes back to the milk. So the better quality milk we use, the better quality it'll taste. There's that. There's also the flavorings that go in. We don't use any flavorings. We make our own flavorings. So if we do something like how can I put it? Like I said to you, a milk chocolate for us, we'll formulate a milk chocolate that we like, that works in there perfectly. Now that may not be a curvature chocolate that has, upwards of 30% cocoa butter. For us, we do have chocolate. We use a cocoa mass. We start off from that, but we may use a different variety of fat in there that works better at a frozen temperature. So that's the sort of manipulation we do within the gelato to achieve something that tastes so luscious. Our dark chocolate, same deal. We use a particular cocoa mass from Ecuador that just brings up the chocolate flavor. The chocolate the cocoa that we source for our gelato comes from Italy, and it's a highly alkalized chocolate, so it gives you this really, really, really robust flavor and dark color in the cabinet. So it's the quality of ingredients. You can use a lot of something shit and it's still going to taste like shit, whereas you use a lot of something that's good, it's going to taste amazing. And that's something we really stick to for us. It's the quality of ingredients, from milk to hazelnuts to pistachio to chocolate to everything. It's not about a cost-saving measure for us. When it comes to that, that's not how you cut costs. We try and make everything more efficient to cut costs on the other end, but not in the quality of ingredients. The gelato's damn good, and we're consistent. I think for us, consistency is key, knowing that you can go from Canberra to Brisbane to Melbourne to Sydney to Hong Kong and you get the exact same flavour. And I think that's really what it is. And we don't skimp. We're not going to make something half-assed and sort of just go, it's all right. If it's not all right, it just doesn't make the cut. So I think it's the quality, and we haven't changed anything. I was talking to someone the other day, and it's like our recipes that we use now, even on this level, are the same recipes that I was using in Darlow. It's just then I was making a 15 kilo batch, and now we're making a 1,500 kilo batch. But nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. Even some of the machinery is still the same stuff that we were using. Well, Darlow was a different animal because that was one store, but when we started to get 2 or 3 stores, we moved to Roselle, a little kitchen in Roselle, and we've still got some of that equipment that hauls us in the kitchen now.
Donato is an early riser because the scale of Messina nowadays requires a full day each day.
So my day starts really early. I'm just an early riser. I get to work at 4 a.m. I'm the first one in. For me, it's a great time because I get to come in, I have a coffee, I check my emails, I rip through all of those, I'll go to the gym, and by the time I get back, the first group is in. So they start at 6. So for me, my day started 2 hours before anyone gets here. But it gets a lot out of the way. I found that if I get stuck in the day and I'm late with everything else, all these things pop up that you just need to sort out. Some days nothing happens and I just get to do stuff. And other days I don't sit at my desk and you're constantly like putting out a fire here or talking to someone there or doing this here. And it gives me a lot of time to spend with the crew that we've got downstairs, and especially the five key members that we've got downstairs. I say downstairs because our production offices are upstairs and the crew's downstairs. So in the actual kitchen. So it gives me time to spend time with them and talk to them, and being able to do that is great. It is great, and generally my day will finish at probably about 3-4 o'clock. We have a 4-day week here, so most of the teams work only Monday to Thursday. We have one team that we're still trying to catch up and trying to get the system a little more streamlined so they can soon work 4 days as well. And once that happens, the only people that work 5 days is our warehouse, and that's basically because there's not enough hours in the day to deliver stock. But for them, Fridays are a bit of a shorter day, and get in, get out, and move on. So we try and have a complete work-life balance for everyone. We don't really work more than 40 hours a week.
After creating their own food production chain, Messina is now set up to explore other avenues, such as their own chocolate brand.
We're not a company that plots things out. Like, even our growth, it's so sporadic. We won't do anything for a year and then the next year we'll open 3. And I think we really like that. We try and keep away from this corporate culture. And I think the one thing is we always look at ourselves as backyarders or hacks. And the more and more we deal with other companies, it's like some people just put on a facade, whereas we just don't try and go in with a facade. We are like, we don't know what we're doing. We'll tell you straight out. we're in this. We'll work it out. And I think it's a lot easier to just get through being honest and not pretending you know everything, and just working it out, because at the end of the day you do. And the drive that we've got is crazy. Like I talked to our exec chef Tom, who just, you know, the things that we do to get things from A to B, we'll come up with an entire new system of doing it that probably no one else has done, or probably someone else has done, and we've just never researched it properly and just gone, right, this is what we're going to do, and it gets there. The way we ship our cakes interstate, that whole process is no cake unless the delivery guy turns off the freezer. There's no way the cakes stuff up, and they're highly elaborate cakes, but we managed to transport gelato across state lines, and it's pretty impressive. So it's that sort of drive that we've got. You know, I think we're sporadic. We don't have a plan, but we've just got drive, and we just get things done.
The move to Messina changed Donato's life, taking him away from the stove and allowed his creative side to flourish.
I think about that constantly, going, where would I be if I didn't have Messina? And I know that I'd be in a kitchen. I'd still be in a kitchen somewhere. I don't know what kitchen, but I look at, you know, my friends who still cook, and obviously they've somewhat stepped out of the game. A lot of them own their own restaurants, but they're still on chops a couple of nights a week, and they're still on the pass, and you know, they're still working, and I assume that's where I would be. So for me now, I haven't, you know, I'm a bit of a imposter. Well, I feel like an imposter because I haven't put on a uniform in years. I'm not even going to say months, in years. You know, my uniform at the moment is a pair of chinos and a t-shirt. You know, it's just casual runabout stuff that I can get dirty and do what I need to do. So yeah, it's changed my life immensely. I sometimes I crave, you know, the early days of just having one store and thinking, it'd be so nice just to have one store and get back on it and sort of do that. And I think my retirement dream would be something along those lines. But I look and think, but would I give up what I have now to do that? And I don't think I would. You know, it's having the facility we've got now is just, it's crazy. It's crazy big. Like, the chefs have got so much space. Everything is, you know, how can I put it? It's easy for them to work. For me now, I like having my chefs come in and they've got lunch, they've got coffees, they've got fresh laundered uniforms. It's all. I just want to make this kitchen very different to the kitchens I grew up in. I just want it to be a nice place. You push 100%. You push. You get the work done, but there's no need for that. That hostility, that sort of a vibe in the kitchen. It's just have fun. Just come in, do your work, and I think it shows because we've got staff that have been with us for 10 years in the kitchen. We've got one person who's just gone on long service leave because they've been with us for so long. Yeah, so I love that. I love that aspect, that it's a kitchen. We've got 45 chefs that work here, and you know, you work Monday to Thursday or Monday to Friday, and you start at 7 a.m, you work hard, you're taken care of, and then you go home and no stress. Just come back to work, do everything you need to do at work, and then chill. We got this.
With a commitment to quality and a belief in maintaining the best standards, Messina has become one of the most influential brands on the planet and a real Australian success story. This is The Producers, a Deep in the Weeds production. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we share the stories of producers, farmers, makers, and growers, the true lifeblood of the food industry. Follow us on Instagram at Producers Podcast or email us at producerspodcast@deepintheweeds.com.au.